Hello, and an official welcome into our October altar space. We are rolling into the first full week of October, and it is in full swing here with our monthly theme, our intuitive words, and just a few of the intuitively selected decks this month. We have so many, just to have some fun with spooky season and the thinning of the veil, Samhain. So we're going to dive in here. It's Sunday afternoon, and we're getting ready for a super moon day coming up tomorrow, Monday, October 6th into 7th. We have a very potent supermoon in Aries. So we're going to touch a little bit on that here with our energetic weather for the week. We're going to choose a Queen of the Moon oracle card to set the tone for this full moon, to tap into the overarching energy, which of course, for some opportunities for deeper connection this week, we will be diving into the full moon empowerment reading. So some of the ways over and above being here on the free Empowerment Sharecast, where we're going to do our weekly collective card pull now, and I will offer to you a free personal card pull if you would like to check in with those energies. We can also work together much more comprehensively through the new moon, or full moon rather, empowerment reading, which again is available now. I'll be diving into those energies tomorrow, and we'll get into a whole bunch of things with the astrological weather, with a ritual that you can do, as well as a full spread that we'll be doing for the energies around this full moon. I'm going to talk a little bit about that here today, and the time machine connection to going back into a particular period of time to connect in with what we may have coming forward with this full moon. And then also, if you did want to come along for this month for the Empowerment Pack, we're just finishing those month ahead energy readings. So you can still snag the full bundle for the month and receive 3 readings with the Empowerment Pack for the month of October, which includes your personal month ahead energies, which I sent you in a video recorded reading. Or you can just do the a la carte for the lunations, starting with this full moon in Aries. So feel free to quick reply here, comment below if you're seeing this in one of my social media spaces, or just reach out and we will get you all set up so that we can connect, because we're going to go much deeper on all the things. For now, we're going to reach into the Queen of the Moon Oracle for that overlighting energy. We're going to use the Halloween Waite tarot. This is a favorite. I think you will recognize it if you've been here for a while when I turn this over. And then we're also going to pull, we'll do a Stacey DeMarco theme between the Queen of the Moon and her Halloween Oracle, which is also a really fun one for the season to get us an overlighting message there for the week as well. So let's get into it. I'm going to shuffle up first, setting the intention for this super full moon in Aries. What's coming forward for us as an overarching theme, energy, message that we can work with in this energy? Potent energy coming in with Aries, fire. And again, like I said, we're going to talk about how that's bringing us back around full circle to a particular time. So let's see what's coming forward here. Queen of the Moon. Discernment. We got this card last month, actually. I believe it was for the blood moon eclipse in Pisces. Interesting. That we got the discernment card. So this is no stranger. And about, the cloudy headsiness and the opportunity now as a 10, where we have cycles ending and then new ones beginning here in the 10th month. And we have this energy of completion and new beginnings, the dissipation of some of that cloudiness. So we're going to talk more about that, and the idea that some of the things that were just being seeded or just beginning back in a particular time could now be finishing out, culminating, being illuminated, brought to light. So there's things that could be coming up, and yes, they will be calling for our discernment. This has definitely been a big theme that we've been tuning into on repeat. So we set that there, and then we'll get out our 5 cards to shuffle up and see what's coming up. And again, this is very true to the traditional Rider-Waite tarot, but with a super fun Halloween spooky flair. So we're going to dive into this one and see what wants to come forward for us this first full week of October, beginning with our Monday card, which is the full moon day, late that evening on the East Coast. I believe it's 11:47 p.m. So for some, depending on where you are in the world, this will be an October 7th event. Nonetheless, we've been having some really bright skies in the evening from that big, bold, beautiful moon. And as it reaches peak fullness, Emperor winking at us there, reaches that peak fullness, the Aries energy, incidentally. Believe we had that out here last week too. This is a full moon in Aries. Let's see, Monday's card. What's coming forward for us? We have that 4 of Swords. I believe, again, it feels like forever. This was actually our Tuesday card last week for the potential block or challenge. Yes, because we had back-to-back 4s. Actually, what just played out was an echo of last week. Last week, we got the Emperor for Monday, which just fell out and winked at us. I put it back. And then we pulled another 4, the Emperor's card 4 of the major arcana. Then we pulled the 4 of Swords for the potential blocker challenge. Well, guess what? They both just flopped out, first out the deck. But this one's going down as Monday's energy, setting the tone for the week. Again, with the 4 energy of the framework and the structure, but also the swords about communication, thoughts, ideas, you know, just taking that pause to recollect ourselves and to really recuperate from a lot. And again, I think that's what this discernment card is talking about too. A lot of covert and overt attempts at keeping the mind very busy, very confused, and very unclear. What's flipped over for us here? You can't make this up. This was also, I don't remember if it was, I think it was the next card. That's crazy. We didn't have Temperance last week, but the Hanged Man. So a lot of echoes from last week. Now remember, we were using a different deck, but that is wild. 78 cards in this deck, guys. And pretty much 1, 2, 3. The same energies from last week winking at us. That was Ace of Swords. Oh my gosh. I'm not kidding. That was also last week because we had that student energy and that sense of, we brought out Archangel Jophiel. Wow, interesting. I feel like I have Let's Do the Time Warp again playing in my head. We're in the Twilight Zone. We haven't even pulled Tuesday's card yet. All right, let's get Tuesday's card for that potential blocker challenge. What do we need to know this week? My goodness, that isn't the same as last week. Oh, there's that Knight of Swords. Yeah, wow. Okay, so yeah, like I said, last week it was the 4 of Swords. Now we have the Knight of Swords as a potential blocker challenge. And there's definitely an energy of, I'm bumping into everything. That's why we're shaking over here. Definitely an energy of, you know, this battle of the minds and the head and this sense of, yeah, well, we have Mercury going into Scorpio. Yes. Okay. We're going to talk about that in the energetic weather. That makes sense. Okay. So Tuesday, Knight of Swords. Wednesday is our midweek blessing. Midweek blessing for Wednesday. Queen of Wands, I love it. Witch of the Tarot, bringing in that magic and that passion, the fire and the inspiration, and wielding our wands and our brooms with care, with discernment, with intention. So we'll talk about that too. Beautiful. I love that. Okay, Queen of Wands, awesome. So I'm not worried at all about that Knight of Swords. It's just a matter of navigating that sometimes very chaotic and frenetic energy. Transmuting that. using our tools. Thursday, how are we growing and how might we expect to grow through this 10th month as we step into this first full week? What's coming in this week and this month? There it is again, the Hanged Man. So there's a pause and a hold up and a hang up that it makes it possible for us to glean new perspectives, seeing things from new angles. Also, I did use this deck for the month ahead readings. So of all the month ahead readings I did last week for the Empowerment Pack, I know this one came up, and so did a number of bats. There was a lot of bat symbolism, maybe not surprisingly, and I'm seeing it here again, so I'll point those out as we go, that the bat represents rebirth. And we actually pulled out the Spirit Animal Oracle deck that we tend to use as a guide for animal energy, and in fact, the affirmation says on the card, rebirth is assured. So again, as far as how quickly it's coming, the patience and the perseverance that it's calling for, Hanged Man, it's all serving. It's all serving toward that rebirth energy. Let's see what's coming up now for Friday to finish out the tarot messages, and then we will pull that Halloween Oracle card to go with. So let's see. Ooh, my goodness, just throwing them all over. That's a whole bunch. Always have to recalibrate to the shuffling of a new to the altar space deck. It's been a year since we've used this one. Get accustomed to how it shuffles. Bring out a card for Friday to wrap up the week. Yeah, 8 of Swords. Again, it's all about perspective and expansion in what we're looking at and how we are perceiving of our environments, what meets the eye, what we cannot see. And again, that mind and that tendency to try to keep us trapped in that prison of our own making that's really about that analysis paralysis of getting caught up in the mind. Or again, intentional external forces intentionally weaving that confusion being something that is definitely also in the mix. So let's see what's coming up for our final card from the Halloween Oracle. One last card with a message for our collective this week. What's coming forward? The Witch, yeah, the earthly weaver of the worlds, and she is the midweek blessing as well. So that is beautiful. We're going to talk about that energy overlighting, not just, again, this first full week, but in general, we're talking about this energy of October and what we may expect as we go through this 10th month in this 9 year of culmination and graduation, and this sense of, what is being closed out so that we can step into new in 2026 as a 1 year back to the beginning. Okay, let's go ahead and pull these up and start checking in with our astrological weather, and we'll take it from there. All right, let's start things off with some energetic weather. 2 aspects I'm going to be talking about here, both at the top of the week. So right out the gate, October 6th, we have Mercury in Scorpio. So we've got some swords on the altar this week again, and I do feel that it's connecting in with this energy as well. The planet of communication, Mercury, moves into the watery and intuitive sign of Scorpio. So our instincts are likely to be sharp at this time, and we may also feel compelled to dig deeper into the facts. So this is a great energy that supports investigative work, complex problem solving. Our gut instinct is likely to lead the way. So again, I think as we look into having 3 swords cards on the altar this week, not very different from last week, again, opportunities in the way we are thinking, speaking, and also in general, connecting the dots in that way, especially as it's highlighting this complex problem solving, which a key ingredient that's going to call for is being sponsored by this super full moon in Aries, the energy of discernment. So now, as we move into Monday, the 6th, and on to October 7th, we have super full moon in Aries peaking. So the super full moon in Aries has some heat around it. So we may be feeling some tensions rising. Aries, the goddess of discord and strife, is likely activated under this full moon. So this is encouraging us to break free of our shackles and to go for what we want. Now, this full moon is going to be supporting us to take a leap of faith, to push past any boundaries or restrictions that have kept us feeling stuck or playing small. So if there's something that we need to get done or some extra stamina required to move ahead, this full moon will deliver it. So with all this fiery and intense energy, we may also be feeling a little more emotionally sensitive than usual. So we may find ourselves feeling short-tempered or struggling to control our emotions. Address any anger or irritability that may arise, but try to do so with kindness and compassion. This full moon is also connected to, remember I said we were going to get into our time machine, the energies of the March equinox and the start of our astrological year, which was March 2025, Aries season, right? So whatever intentions that we set at that time may be coming into fruition. So this is taking us back, this full moon in Aries, to Aries season, which started this astrological year. And in fact, many people have been likening this to like a 9-month pregnancy, right? Pregnant with possibilities that are being birthed into the new. And remember I said rebirth is assured, right? So we've got this 9-month cycle that's been playing out. We're in the final trimester now, October, November, December. But going back to March, which was the true astrological year, beginning with Aries season back at the top of the zodiac. And we've been making our way through and find ourselves now here in Libra season with this opportunity to balance and recalibrate those scales, really looking at balance and fairness and justice and karmic aspects all coming to the fore here. And this is a very potent full moon in the mix. So like I said, we will be diving deeper into this in the full moon empowerment reading. So if you would like to come along, please check out that information. You can reach out to me and we'll get you all set up where we're going to dive in deeper. But let's take a look now at that Queen of the Moon Oracle card that came forward to start that conversation, the card of discernment. All right, so we kick off our card messages this week with the card of discernment that's come forward from the Queen of the Moon as an overlighting energy of this full super moon in Aries. Card 10, again, 10th month. Card 10 representing endings and new beginnings, fullness, coming into completion, wholeness, ending of a cycle with this full moon. And then on the other side, new beginnings. So this card of discernment says, I take my time to be accurate and precise in my discernment. Now, I notice with our How We Are Growing coming up this week as a hanged man, which again is going to slow us down, to bring us into a presence of the moment and to be here now and very much attuned into our gut, right? You see the hands placed over the solar plexus. It's bringing us out of the head where there's this fog, these clouds, this unclarity with what we're seeing or not seeing. And we're being encouraged to go into the gut, go inside, right? And so we're talking about taking care in your choices now, looking carefully and judging wisely. So there may have been something difficult to see or something that has been obscured, but now it has been revealed to you. Examine it closely. And like I said, we're going to dive deeper into this card and exactly how this message is coming forward for this lunation. But looking at it in the context of our collective energy this week, no question we're talking in part about the macro, right? The big stage and the things that are coming up for review for us to discern using your critical thinking, but really connecting that in with your internal truth detector and really tuning into that sense of your own inner knowing, your gut. So that's really what I'm feeling being highlighted here in terms of what might be becoming clear through this full moon, through the energies and the subsequent waves that we'll be riding on the other side of it into this week. So we'll see where it takes us from there. And like I said, with this, I will also be doing a full spread for the full moon with a selected deck. So that's going to help to give some more insight into exactly how this could be showing up and our best path forward to navigate through an empowered perspective, because we get to choose. And that is something that we're going to see on repeat in this spread when it comes to the perspectives that we are taking and the different ways, the different angles through which we can examine things to draw our own informed conclusions. So let's jump in and start things off with our spread for the week ahead. All right, let's get things started with our Monday energy. A repeat card from last week now moved over to kind of set the tone for the week. This was the blocker challenge last week in a different deck. Now we're going to tune into it through the lens of the Halloween Waite tarot, where we've got the Four of Swords showing up here with this mummy lying in this state that is about really taking that break, taking that time out. It really is about recollecting ourselves and really disconnecting from all of the mental jousting and all of the activity. We're setting all those swords down. And like I said, we're going to see the bat regularly throughout. And one of the things I think is cool is that all of the swords have bats at the tip as well. And so the bat is our symbol for rebirth. And that is what we are undergoing right now, whether you're talking about in your own life or closing out chapters and turning over new pages and starting out on new horizons, and whether we're talking about healing and recuperating from something, or we talked about this, where some people might be stepping into this month energized and inspired and ready to kick off something new. Others, dragging in there like Quasimodo, like kind of beat up from all of it. And this card is even speaking to, after all of the heartbreak of the Three of Swords comes the Four of Swords, which can be about licking your wounds after a wearying battle, could be physical or emotional, and to really try to unwind intellectually or mentally. And that's what I think with the webs that we see. There's spider webs on these swords. And if these swords represent our thoughts, our ideas, our beliefs, communication, it's sticky. That's where I feel there's this sense of, and especially coming from our Knight of Swords, we'll talk about in a moment, of some sort of manipulative behavior when it comes to your mental capacity to really give energy towards certain things, and you're being encouraged to cut those cords, to really take a rest, to set down that sword, which equals the mental energy capital that you've been investing in certain things. So we'll see, how that comes up. And of course, it's going to vary for everyone, but I do think there's a big old thread of collective guidance coming in throughout this spread this week. So let's take a look now at Tuesday's energy for the potential block or challenge. All right, Tuesday for our potential block or challenge, and rightfully so, has a giant full moon in the background, because this is truly where the super moon in Aries energies will be playing out across Tuesday and into this week. So we've got here this pumpkin head off and running, and I can really feel the energy of this Knight of Swords. And this is where we can look at the Knight of Swords in a bit of out of alignment. And in fact, the Halloween Waite is saying, a pumpkin-headed man rides a horse inspired by the colors of the candy corn candies that we see here, with a huge full moon seen in the background. This card can represent, and this is where I'm tapping into this collective energy of the mental jousting. This card can represent someone who stirs things up by running head first into a situation without knowing all the facts. They may mean well, but can sometimes be a troublemaker. So, and on a positive note, it can be that it's showing that you're getting things done quickly, that things are constantly moving along. And that's great if you have a project that you want to complete, or you yourself have been looking for a little extra boost of energy or momentum. Yes, for some that can be. But this is a block or challenge. So we could be challenged in those areas, not feeling motivated, not having the energy, not having the stamina. And this is where I feel these two cards together, remembering that this card was in Tuesday's position last week as a challenge, is like we need a break from all of that relentless mental activity. And especially when it's done impulsively without knowing all the facts, or in some way that is really, again, can be very manipulative and, again, from first glance can be seen one way, that actually the hanged man is coming in to help us grow into taking a beat, looking at it from different angles, from a much more neutral and detached place. So we'll see, where that takes us. But for sure, on a collective level, there's an opportunity to step back from that fray. This full moon stirring things up. And like I said, we're going to really get into that in the full moon empowerment reading. So I'm really going to have a sense of it once I tune in tomorrow with those energies. But that's just kind of what I'm getting intuitively, that this week there could be someone or an energy that can be very impulsive, reckless, kind of knee-jerk reaction, acting without thinking it through, or speaking without really bringing it down through the filter, that type of energy, which you are not going to benefit from investing a ton of your time and attention into. Let's take a look now at Wednesday for our midweek blessing. All right, Wednesday is our Queen of Wands, and I do feel that with the Witch finishing us out, like I said, we're going to talk about, I do feel with the witch hat a connection here that feels very connected to you in your empowerment and wielding this wand, this broom, where you are at your best, versus what happens when we try to entertain this mess. Right? This mess gets us all tangled up and in positions where we can't see the forest for the trees, right? And we feel very disempowered, and we feel like our options are few, or that we're bound and limited in what we can do. So we're going to talk about that as the week goes on. But this Queen of Wands really sets the tone as a blessing for what's real. In the midst of all the things, I know this much is true, right? That this is me in my most empowered state. And also says here about the Queen of Wands, this queen enjoys parties and get-togethers, and she's seen here with a glass of red wine in hand, with a broom in her other hand. And it's saying that she's been caught here mid-preparation for the festivities. Her broom denotes her desire to always be on the move and doing something. She is an active woman and will be having guests over, as playing the host is where she feels at home. Now, of course, this Queen of Wands is a nod to all our fire signs, and there is definitely a sense of, yes, the entertainer, and also being in this sense of, doing, taking action, that the fire aspect. And yet, again, we don't want to crash and burn. So reminding the fact that our best guidance here is to take a time out sometimes. If you have overscheduled or you do find yourself with a lot going on, then there's opportunity to sit down and chill, right? And you don't have to have a glass of wine, but whatever your beverage of choice, allowing yourself to really just be in the moment of recharging so that you can get back to making your magic. And like I said, we're going to talk about that more with the witch here toward the end of the week. So let's take a look now at Thursday's energy. All right. Thursday is how we are growing. And we look at that in the context of this week, but also sort of setting the tone for this month and how we may expect to be growing through, and in this case, the hanged man, which can have to do with the hang-ups, the hold-ups, the delays. Here it's described as a vampire dressed man hangs upside down from a tree. And it says this card usually implies a break in activity, sometimes involuntary and out of your hands. And it can also speak to self-sacrifice. So one of the things actually that caught my eye was how it almost was looking like an upside down 4. When I was looking at it, this way, that again, that number 4, because last week we got that Emperor to start off the week, card 4 of the major arcana, the Aries card. And now this week we have an Aries super moon happening on Monday into Tuesday. And then we had the 4 of Swords, and kind of the same thing happened this one. 4 of Swords again this week, because the Emperor fell out during the card pull. And then the very next card was the 4 of Swords. So I was feeling the 4 for the aspect of framework, balance, this sense of the way that he's hanging by one foot with the other one crossed over. Again, I don't think that this is necessarily like a long delay or a long holdup, but it is sort of like a necessary pause or break in some way that we learn through, grow through the experience of having to have patience, trust divine timing, accept that sometimes the rejection or the snag or whatever it is actually a gift. And we don't always get to know the full picture of how it served, or sometimes it takes a while before we have that hindsight. But this one is also giving quite a rested, again, there is this sense of a timeout for self. The 4 of Swords coming back for a second week, setting the tone for the week. And then this card, both have a rather rested, sedentary, take a breather, take a beat kind of energy. So I think too is that we're learning to grow in the pause. And so sometimes it's forced, sometimes it's voluntary. And wherever that lands for you, it is all a part of what we're growing through. And we see here again, 2 bats and some leaves that are again giving us that sense of what we're releasing, what we're dropping, what we're letting go in the name of growth. And in this case, rebirth and expansion. And, just that sense, he himself with the bat wings. So there's just this sense of what is growing at this time is something that's taking divine time to unfold. And so just being present with that. And, this is our one major arcana card of the week. So it's a significant energy and one that we'll keep our eye on then as we move through this month, since this is setting the tone for us in how we may expect to grow. Let's take a look at our final tarot card with Friday's energy coming right up. All right, Friday is our 8 of Swords. And again, I'm going to say, I feel these two very connected, because this is like a disempowered witch, and this is the empowered witch. And so this is our final message that we'll get to in just a few moments. But looking at this 8 of Swords, the message is coming in here from the Halloween Waite tarot saying, a woman dressed as a witch feels trapped in a bad situation. This is a feeling of not knowing how to escape and really being unable to see a way out of it. Sometimes the feeling of being trapped clouds the mind, blocking us from seeing a solution. A spider hangs from her hat, a lucky omen symbolizing creativity, and her black cat symbolizes her familiar. Perhaps she can learn from others how to see a way out of this trouble. Again, the hang-ups, the delays, and the feeling of limited options, or in some way feeling like there is a lack of ideas, resources, room to move, whatever, because of course the 8 of Swords gives this feeling of being trapped, and in this case surrounded by all of those swords, which again are adorned with bats on the tips. So in the name of all of the rebirth energy. Let me take a look again at the, this is our spirit animal oracle, and bat is an energy that is in here. And this is, again, what I referred to in a couple of the month ahead readings, because we kept seeing the bat coming up. So this is, bat spirit in that deck, and it is card number 5, which of course, this being the 5th day of the week that we're looking at too, position 5, but 5 being that number of change, of transition, and the confusion and the chaos that can come in that in between. So again, this witch, feeling like her options are few, or, this sense of not knowing how to get there, not really being able to see a way out, or in this case, see or think or perceive of a way out. Now, looking at Bat Spirit, when Bat Spirit is in the protection, so when there is a sense of restriction or in some way imbalance, it says, what are you refusing to let die? Bat Spirit is gently nudging you to let go of your need to cling to the familiar story that has already run its course. A new story is poised to be born. Some dreams were only meant to last for a moment in time. Sometimes they were only there to slow you down as you recalibrated in preparation for the new life that will give you what you really want. So again, I'm feeling that connection. The slowing you down is the Four of Swords and the Hanged Man. Both speak to taking that pause, taking that beat, taking that rest. And it's a mindful rest here. And mindful in the way of the opposite of what that sounds like, because we don't want to be filled with thoughts and analysis and all of that, really driven by the mind, but it's intentional. It's an intentional rest. So it's saying that some dreams were only meant to last for a moment in time and meant to slow you down as you recalibrated in preparation for a new life that will give you what you really want. Perhaps you need to grieve as you say goodbye to something. At least you're saying goodbye to its familiar form. Perhaps you must let go of a part of you that must die so that you can be reborn. This temporary time in the dark doesn't have to be scary or sad, though. Bat Spirit gives you her powers of perception and awareness as you learn to listen deeply and navigate these unknown caves of temporary emptiness. Wow, that's powerful. Unknown caves of temporary emptiness. You will emerge with a new perspective, and Bat Spirit will witness your giving birth to the life that matches the intentions and desires of your heart and soul. Yeah, with that too, I'm getting some people really do struggle to rest, right? And I'm looking at this guy, this Knight of Swords, being the blocker challenge this week, because he's go, go, go. It's fast moving, it's energy, it's air always coming in, and it just moves things. And so there's this sense of it's very hard to be slowed down. It's almost like, when you have an injury or something that you just cannot go at your regular pace. You can't do something as efficiently as you normally can, but it's temporary. It's a temporary pause, and in many cases it's forced, which, there's all kinds of connection to that in terms of, and yet even this guy's a mummy, talk about being bound, she's bound, he's bound. So there's this sense of feeling like there's nothing I can do. I can't prevent this pause, this inaction from happening. So how do I surrender to it? Because the harder that I try to push back, the tighter the binding feels, when actually it's all clear here in front of me. I just can't see it. And it hasn't been time for me to see it. Maybe I wasn't in a space to hold that, and again, as we talk about discernment being called for, illumination coming in, and again, take it back to Aries season kicking off in March, and again, what was going on for you then that you now may have space for to hold that you weren't ready for at the time. Even if it was something that you really wanted and you wanted it like yesterday, you can now perhaps see how, I wouldn't have been able to handle that at that time. I wasn't in a position to have what I have now, or, now that I have the hindsight of what all it entailed, I now understand why I was being paced, why I was being made to sit tight, you know? So there is sort of that sense of, you know, what we're wading through, but also, again, bringing in our third witch hat here with this beautiful Queen of Wands. And yeah, because we notice one of the ways that we can see that is here and here. So we have the two, the familiar there. And it did even use that word, of course, it's speaking of familiar in the sense of her animal, you know, her black cat. But the description here of that eight of the bat spirit that I was reading from also talked about things being actually familiar, you know, and the discomfort when something is not familiar. But again, I think we're using, yeah, because even the red wine, it's like making something from even the sourest of grapes, right? We're using our magic, our ingenuity, our inspiration, our creativity, our fire to make something of whatever the circumstances, whatever the environment, whatever the perspective is that we see right in front of us, we have this potential to create something that feels really aligned. And again, she's head to toe purple, feeling that third eye, that intuition, that inner knowing, that sense. That I think, again, this is building up to something that as we're finishing out even these 3 months, not just October, but this is starting us off this first full week in October with these messages about what we are co-creating with spirit that is taking divine time to get there. So we're going to see what the witch has to say to close out our messages for this week. So we'll switch over to that and finish things up for us. So let's take a look. All right, so our final card that is bringing it all together here is from the Halloween Oracle, the Witch. And it says, the earthly weaver of the worlds. And so she represents earth, air, fire, and water. A woman lovely, a woman strange, weaver of the worlds, moon's daughter, witch, the catalyst for change. It says, witches have had a bad PR day for a couple of millennia now. Originally, the healers or cunning women of the village, the very word witch comes from the Celtic word Wicca, meaning weaver or wise. When the new religion of Christianity spread through the land, the custodians of the old pagan ways, in part witches, were labeled as evil, and as we know from history, persecuted. They were driven underground or under the night sky into the shadows of misunderstanding and darkness. However, for the purposes of Halloween, let's look at witches as the weavers of magic and change. Through spells and rituals and even through herbal recipes, yes, often brewed in a cauldron, they weave the powers of this world and the next in synergy to solve problems and heal. Holding the witch card means that you can weave your own change throughout your life and that magic indeed is afoot. You must understand that you have power and it is real. It may also indicate that others may be threatened by your developing personal power and that they may not appreciate or like the changes in you as you grow. Be prepared for this and do not be discouraged. New friends and better opportunities will be attracted instead. Yeah, so for sure, no question, the connectedness of our Eight of Swords, our Queen of Wands, and the Witch. All the same person, all the same energy. It's just these different states of being, empowered, disempowered, and definitely in a state of, you know, capturing the essence of, as the Queen of Wands does, of owning it and, you know, creating a space where others are also encouraged to be their authentic self, to be a sovereign being, to say, this is what I'm all about. And whatever that is. And again, yes, others may not like it, especially if you've been playing. And remember this month, our intuitive words are behind the mask, beyond the veil. So if we've been wearing different masks, whether consciously or subconsciously, going along with something that we actually really don't like or don't prefer, or, doing something in the name of people pleasing or to be accommodating, but actually that's not a true representation of our desire or our being or whatever it is. That is becoming harder and harder to continue to wear that mask. That's where I feel the Eight of Swords is feeling that binding. It's just getting so tight to wear that costume anymore. And so it feels so liberating and freeing when you do step into your power and take up space, as this witch is doing. Very similar, actually, to the discernment card. So might I remind you that the discernment card, while she has the clouds all across her front, like her vision and her head, she's holding that yellow ball, hands on top and bottom, over the solar plexus. Here we have it being held side to side, again, over this heart space and central, sun to the body with the solar plexus. So there's this sense of, again, owning your power, holding your own power, and really wielding your own power. And you can do that from a very respectful, compassionate space that's actually being a way shower as a weaver, to demonstrate what it is to very honestly, respectfully, and authentically stand in your truth, stand in your power, and you hold that bar in a place that invites others to join you there, which is, of course, their free will choice. And what happens is, as we grow, as we evolve, as we expand, our frequency raises, and we can find that things that don't meet that frequency will vibrate out of our awareness. And in that way, it can look like people not liking it so much and very well telling us so, or maybe feeling like, on the outs, not included in certain things, but it's actually a sense of not FOMO, the fear of missing out, but JOMO, right? The joy of missing out, because it's actually something that I don't really enjoy after all, or ultimately isn't serving me from my most authentic space. So I think this is a really powerful card to finish out this week's messages, which are really creating those threads to weave into this month, this message of going behind the mask and then beyond the veil, which is our connection to spirit and ancestors, and really feeling like, being able to wield this magic through our power of intention and energy, the frequency that we're holding. So, we'll continue to build on that, but I really do think these are some, very significant energies, building blocks for this month. And I think makes a lot of sense that it's happening on this week of this significant lunation, super moon in Aries. So again, more to come there. If you're joining me for that full moon empowerment reading, again, anyone who would like a personal card pull this week here, you can let me know, and I will go ahead and be in touch with that for you this week as well. So wishing you all full moon blessings, and look forward to connecting with you as we move through the week. Much love.